Hey guys, welcome to the Ryan podcast. Today I'm here with Tristan. Would you like to introduce yourself, Tristan?
I'm Tristan. I'm an ancient Egyptologist. I know a good 90% of all ancient Egyptian history and have been spent years studying into such a topic.
This is interesting, man. Okay, so first we're going to talk about some ancient history, guys, because we're also going to talk about some ancient wars between different ancient empires, see who would win. Also, we'll talk about modern versus ancient empires. So, let's get started.
So, the Roman Empire just expanded a bunch, and honestly, I believe things could have gone differently. Seemed like Rome was this unbeatable thing, but they got their asses kicked a lot.
Yeah.
They just got beaten a lot. No, it was just pure spam, though. They would just spam an army. There was no real skill. Their formations and their strategies were so basic, but it was all just spam, except for when they had to adapt to naval warfare, and they built this whole thing. And that's the thing, too, when the Carthaginians came in and they started, they had to face the Romans with naval warfare, but the Romans had never fought on water. They were only a land battle experienced nation at the time. They've never experienced naval warfare, so they just copied the design of a Carthaginian ship, and then they decided to build a crane on there that would have it would latch onto an enemy ship, and there'd be this bridge so they can turn a naval battle into a land battle. It's just that was as clever when they had that innovation of adapting, but other than that, it was all spam, and I feel like the only thing that held back all those other factions that faced Rome just didn't have their stuff together.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have it together. And I feel like other empires, absurdly powerful, like the Seleucid Empire and Egyptian powers at the time, they just didn't have it together politically.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Rome was just a lucky faction.
Because during that time frame, there wasn't a lot of very strong empires that were really able to challenge them.
Well, there was the Seleucid Empire, which stretched from the west coast of Turkey all the way to Afghanistan, but they just were so harassed on the other side. But there was Egypt, which politically didn't have it together if they were more united, and instead of a Greek-owning dynasty, it should have been a native Egyptian dynasty. They would have had it together, because when there were no foreigners ruling Egypt, it was a very unified place. It was their religion to know that the king was in power, and that's what kept them in power for so long. And that's what kept that kingdom and civilization longer than most others.
Yeah, that sounds about right, to be completely honest. Well, let's go to our next part. That was your ancient history moment. Okay, which ancient empire do you think would win? Okay, just by their height, I guess.
Yeah.
Sparta or Macedonia?
Macedonia, at the height of both of them.
Full power.
The thing that's really interesting about that is that Sparta and Macedon had decided to conquer all of Greece by Philip, that was father of Alexander the Great. But he just conquered all of Greece except Sparta. He just never really conquered Sparta. Went to Athens, the city of Thebes, all Thessaly, every part of mainland Greece except Sparta, strangely, and which was still enough to conquer Persia by Alexander the Great. But if they ever faced off, man, at both of their heights, you would have had Macedon basically at the empire of Alexander the Great. So the Macedonians would have had power. They would have had resources from all over the ancient Middle East because of the Macedonian Empire. But then we would have had Sparta at its height, which, it comes into some conflict, because at that time, the Spartans had their whole land, but they also had won the Peloponnesian War, or I think the Peloponnesian War against the Athenians. But pretty much when it came to land battles like hoplite warfare, they were pretty much almost invincible, but they didn't have good like siege warfare, and there were some other spots where they weren't that good. But would the Macedonians have won? It's tough to say, really. But I think because of the resources that the Macedonians had, it sadly would have been the Macedonians. But if the Spartans had decided to innovate just a little more, they would have had such a great fighting chance. And if they went straight for the capital of Macedon, then the Empire of Macedon would have split because Alexander the Great shortly dies. Then the Spartans could have won.
Yeah. Alright. And then we're also going to talk about some modern versus ancient. You got any things for modern versus ancient?
Oh, yeah. So, like, we have these big modern powers: China, Russia, America, European Union. And they talk, in some informational videos about America being like the most powerful military force in the world, with China and Russia in second and third place. But the thing is, when I see that, it's all intimidation tactics. In the Cold War, the USA, and the Soviet Union were trying to scare each other into not attacking each other. And that was the whole thing of the Cold War. They built all these scare weapons. They built big bombers and nuclear weapons, but not enough for actual, military efficiency. Back in the day, in ancient times, they built for military efficiency, but in the Cold War, they built for scaring people, to go, look at us, we're so big and strong, you wouldn't dare attack us. And in modern times, they're still hanging on to that. I feel like perhaps if certain ancient empires like Rome, Persia, or Macedonian Empire, or maybe even something as small and simple as the ancient Egypt under Ramesses II, they had of course inferior technology, but if they had the modern equivalent, of power that they had just replaced with modern technology, they would have kicked a lot of ass, because they would have had no they really didn't consider much about alliances, because the only thing that stops major wars from happening today is because everyone's in a one big alliance. China, Russia, India, there's the BRICS alliance, and that's stopping other powers from attacking them. And then we have NATO, but you had small powers conquer bigger powers before. We had Germanic tribes taking down Rome. We had Macedon taking down Persia. If Rome, Egypt, and Greece and Persia in their ancient times were actually revived and were the way they were just with modern technology, they would have had no such regard. And war was different back then. War today is about money. War back then was more about glory and power by conquest of land. But nowadays, factions are really doing stuff for money. There's no way the USA takes 20 years in Afghanistan to lose. I think that was more about money. There was more corruption. Less corruption in ancient times, though. There were a lot of corruption happening there, but some more unified powers would have had a better opportunity.
Imagine if Sparta had weapons in the modern days.
Oh yeah, it would have been a whole game changer, especially with the rest of Greece. It'd be oh well, we need just to unify this, but then Sparta, being Spartans, it would have been Navy SEALs. It's an entire nation, but with the modern equivalent of Navy SEALs. That's what it is.
Alright guys, that's going to end our podcast today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank this guy for coming in and teaching us a few things. If you guys want to, I'm going to make a Discord server. That's up to you guys in the comments below, so we can talk more about ancient stuff. Yeah. See you guys later. Next episode is going to be how to get rich in real life with this guy again. See you.